idea of unbridled female sexuality is extremely threatening to people because it undermines the whole illusion that all of this is going on. But what actually happens is that once you've embraced that you no longer have to own this person, the jealousy goes away. It's just like when I was at the party last weekend, he had a relationship conversation with me, and the next morning I overheard him having a relationship conversation with another woman. But you see, because there was no territoriality, there wasn't any jealousy, there wasn't any fighting, there wasn't any, you see what I'm saying? There wasn't any conflict.
Thanks for tuning into Red Pill Philosophy. I have a very interesting guest today. She might piss you off, or you might love her to death. So I guess we'll have to find out later. She's got her website / blog. It's called www.erikaawakening.com. And she posted an article about a week ago or so. And the name of the article is 5 Reasons Why Monogamy is an Absolute Bar to World Peace. And when I saw this circulating around my Facebook, the first thing I thought was, what the fuck is this? This sounds awesome. So I clicked on it, and it actually made a lot of sense to me. It actually kind of connected to a lot of the stuff that I've been telling you guys before in some of my past videos. So, Erika, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good, thank you very much.
Alrighty,
I went to a non-monogamous party last night and had a great
time.
I
wasn't sure if you wanted to elaborate on that. If you don't mind, that would be really cool.
Well, it's super cool because I met this new guy, but I was already involved a little bit with this other guy who was actually hosting the event. Same guy as helped me with the event last weekend. So it was so interesting because right straight off the bat with the new guy, I got in a conversation about how I'm not into monogamy, and he's like, me either. So that was like a great bonding. But then what was super cool is I ended up hooking up with the first guy during the party, and the other guy was totally cool with it. So we were able to have this amazing connection without any jealousy or like weird, you know what I'm saying?
Wow.
It felt so
funny.
liberating.
It's funny because as you speak, I have these knee-jerk like impulses inside of me to like want to judge you and look down on you and to feel jealous. Yeah, it really takes effort to like restrain that. But it's just funny how ingrained the social conditioning is. But I think when you step back and you try to look at marriage and monogamy in an objective, rational way. I think inevitably you come to see things with a much different perspective than the one that we're used to.
Yeah. Because
it really is just cultural programming stuff. I know my camera kind of froze. I'm working on that right now.
Okay.
But yeah. So again, I mean, you've got 5 reasons here posted on your site. The first one here says monogamy is not based in love; it is based in hatred.
Yeah. Boy, did that trigger a lot of people.
I'm sure it did, because that's the whole premise of marriage, is love.
Yeah.
Could you elaborate a little bit on that?
Yeah, it's not a new idea in the sense that a lot of people know I've been studying A Course in Miracles for quite a while, which is a spiritual text. I'm not religious. I don't believe in... I have a lot of issues with organized religion, because I think it can turn into people giving their power away. But I have a tremendous amount of respect for this book. And as I read it over the years, it started to make more and more and more sense to me that when people are getting into monogamous marriage, they're trying to create union in separation. I don't know if that makes sense.
It makes perfect sense.
They're trying to create love in a situation where it cannot exist. Not to say that nothing loving ever happens. I'm not saying that. I'm sure there is some like loving stuff that happens. But because they have separated themselves from everybody else, they actually turn it into hatred. Does that make sense?
It does. See, here's the thing. Because I have a few friends and family members who, I don't want to say I try to convince them out of getting married, But I try to kind of give them an alternative perspective.
Uh-huh.
And one of the interesting things that I've noticed about, marriage or just the general monogamy concept is how so often there's this underlying kind of tone between the partners of like this passive-aggressive kind of subtle hatred where, on the surface they love each other and they spent a shitload of money on a honeymoon and a marriage ceremony, and they have these very expensive rings that are somehow supposed to indicate their love. I always thought that was retarded. It was like, okay, so you love each other so much, you have to buy these highly expensive rings to prove it to each other. Like, that always kind of pissed me off and was annoying. I told my ex-girlfriend that once, and she dumped me soon after, because the idea of not getting a shiny ring, I guess that invalidated our love. I mean, it goes to show.
Right, because it's really all about digging out a stone out of South Africa's, and using cheap labor to do it too. That's what love is.
Exactly. And then of course it also manifests in the form of partners cheating on each other. I mean, it seems like almost everyone gets some kind of infidelity going on in their marriage at one point. It's almost inevitable, it seems. So the second point you make here in your article is monogamy is territorial, which leads to war. Could you elaborate a little bit on that?
Yeah, well, like what I was telling you about what happened last night, although I realize it is triggering for people because we have all this baloney social conditioning that basically says women are supposed to be non-sexual, right? And
they're supposed to be sexual just with one man.
Right. So the idea of unbridled female sexuality is extremely threatening to people because it undermines the whole illusion that all of this is going on. But what actually happens, what happened at the party last weekend and what happened at the party last night, is that once you've embraced that you no longer have to own this person, the jealousy goes away. It's just like when I was at the party last weekend, he had a relationship conversation with me, and the next morning I overheard him having a relationship conversation with another woman. But you see, because there was no territoriality, there wasn't any jealousy, there wasn't any fighting, there wasn't any, you see what I'm saying? There wasn't any conflict. And that's what people aren't seeing. Like, as soon as they draw these tight, exclusive boundaries around their relationship, they have immediately given rise to jealousy and secrecy and lying to each other and all of the other things that we don't want, if that makes sense. Yeah,
it does. It seems like, when you talk about war and how possibly there are reflections of war, or that maybe monogamy is a reflection of the same negative trait that leads to war, war is often based on scarcity. It's based on the perception that there's a limitation of resources here, so we got to go over there and bomb the shit out of them and take their fucking oil.
We have to take it by force. Yeah.
Take it by force because people over there are not going to negotiate and share it with you peacefully. They're probably going to hoard it for themselves, so we got to, we got to go get it. And that scarcity is reflected in marriage. I mean, it's the idea that there's only one person in the world out there for me, and I got to hold them down. I mean, as long as you set the limit of your sexual interactions and your relationship interactions to one person, it seems inevitable that you're going to constantly be scratching around like Gollum, worried that you might lose your precious.
Exactly. It becomes codependent 100% of the time because that's what happens whenever we make anything our exclusive source of something we need, right? Could be love, sex, money, anything. It's a monopoly, essentially, and we know that monopolies don't work. We know that from business, we know that from life.
It's like a self-imposed monopoly.
Yeah. And what you said also, to me, it's like, come on, people, let's be honest. We look at the divorce rates, we look at the cheating rates. So we know people aren't monogamous anyway. Like, you can call it monogamy, but they're not. So then the question is, are we going to be honest, or are we going to go behind each other's backs and destroy
I think that's the big thing right now, is that people don't want to admit the degree to which they have sexual desires for more than one person. We're in such a state of denial especially women, I think nowadays, because it's so socially inappropriate for women to be honest about their sexual desires, and it perpetuates this illusion that we are something we're not, that we're somehow interested in these tied down, what almost always become boring and redundant marriages when you're stuck with the same person. I mean, it's not so much that you're with one person, it's that you're not allowed to leave the person.
Yeah.
Like you're like bound by ball and chain, by legal contracts to be around them no matter what. It's like, if you guys loved each other and there was no concern about whether or not you guys might cheat on each other or leave each other, why go through all this legal burdening process to tie each other down? Like, it's almost like the impulse to tie each other down reflects your insecurity in the supposed love you guys have for each other. Like, if you guys' love is so strong, so mutual, where's all the need for all these legally binding contracts?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, people tell me over and over again, but I'm choosing monogamy. I'm like, well, you don't need to put a wall around your relationship to choose that. You know, that it's the creation of that wall where the fear comes in, and the scarcity and the monopoly and all the other negative stuff.
Absolutely. Okay, so another reason you point out in your article is that monogamy is based on the same belief system that causes sickness. Now, this might get a little too new agey for my viewers. That's fine, because I'm open-minded. Can you kind of go over that one?
Yeah, it's maybe more than we could explain here anyway, but I'll try to at least give you a metaphor to work with. Sure. So I'm an energy healer, and with energy healing, like anyone who's studied Reiki or whatever, what you realize is that sickness is always an energy blockage. It's something that's not flowing freely. So when my cat got sick, I had to find where those blockages were, where emotions weren't flowing freely, and I had to remove the blockages, because when the energy can flow, and I know this is going to sound new agey to some people, but this is literally how it works, and it's a very repeatable process, teachable, repeatable process. So when you remove these blockages, the energy flows and the healing happens spontaneously. It's just like if you've cut your arm, as long as you don't interfere with the healing, it's going to heal itself. But if for some reason something is blocked and the healing energy can't get in there, you'll get a chronic problem. Does that make sense?
It does to me, yeah.
Okay. So basically, with monogamy, what you've done, if you think of the hologram, the way the world is as a place where energy needs to flow for healing to happen, and that would include spontaneous communication, so not all this dishonesty and going behind people's back, and censorship. So you'd have open flowing communication, you'd have open flowing sexuality, you have open flowing money too, like money's another form of this, right? You let it all flow, and in that flowing, you're going to get healing and spontaneous resolution of problems. So what monogamy essentially does is block that energy from moving where it needs to go. Does that make sense?
Sure.
So it's very metaphorical to what energy healing does. It's like telling an energy healer like me, I know you know how to heal this, but you're not allowed to remove this blockage.
Yeah. There's a lot of validity to what you say. I mean, in my own experience, I did something called transformational breathing.
What's it called?
A few months ago.
I'm sorry, I missed that.
Yeah, it's called transformational breathing. Okay. I mean, there's different names for it. It's for a documentary that I've been working on for a few months about flotation tanks. You ever heard of flotation tanks before?
I haven't really experienced one, but I've heard about them.
Okay. So I did the transformational breathing, and basically the guy, I guess you can call him an expert on it. He's been doing it for many years. And, it's basically a process of breathing. You breathe in a certain way. It's called circular breathing. And basically, after about 30 minutes of doing this, you basically lie on the floor and you just breathe in a very particular way for like an hour straight. Mm-hmm. About 30 minutes through, I began to feel a surge of emotion kind of building up inside of me, like the impulse to cry. I just wanted to cry my eyes out. Mm-hmm. And it basically it peaked, it climaxed with just me bawling, like at a funeral or something. I was just crying, I was just letting out all these emotions. It was really, really intense, and I didn't even know I had that in me. And so a lot of people can walk around their whole lives with pent up, memories, things that didn't address, emotions, negativity, and they can just kind of hang around with you. You don't even know it's there, but it can affect you on subtle, possibly subconscious levels. So I'm just throwing that out there for my audience.
Yeah.
So, they kind of get a little different perspective that this kind of energy stuff that we were just talking about isn't as far-fetched as the scientific dogma would have us believe. So.
Science is its own religion, so... But what you just said would be like going back to what we were talking about, that you unblocked something, and that allowed a healing process to take over in the way I understand the world.
Right. Yeah, I mean that's basically what he told me. He went as far as to tell me that he's had experiences before where some of his clients would they would be this one lady, for example, she began to feel intense pain in her knee while she was doing the transformational breathing. And it was really, really bad, and it lasted for like 2 days, and then it disappeared. And it turns out that her knee, the one that was hurting, that had been bothering her whole life. Because when she was a kid, she broke her knee, and she'd always had a pain and a limp in that left knee of hers. Well, after the transformational breathing, after that surging amount of pain came, about 2 days later, all the pain was gone and the limping was gone, and she was basically, her knee felt better than it felt her whole life.
Yeah.
And the explanation, the theory behind that is that we can hold traumas in our bodies in ways deeper than just the physical tissues, but maybe in terms of the trauma to our emotions, our personalities, the way we address that experience.
Yes.
So he has countless cases like these.
Yeah, so do I. So that's exactly what we're talking about, is that we've got to unblock things so that those trapped traumas can be released.
Definitely. All right, so the fourth reason you put forth here is monogamy is poverty consciousness. Could you elaborate a little bit?
Yeah, well, it really goes back to what you already said, which is... it's a monopoly. It's putting all of your need for whatever people restrict to their monogamous relationship, be it love, sex, or money. Yeah, it's not just, monogamy is not just about sex. It's about creating atomistic, separate households that are usually quite separate from the rest of society. So a lot of times it's not just sex that becomes monogamous. It also becomes financial dependency and lots of other forms of dependency, right? So when people have restricted themselves in that way, it is a form of poverty consciousness, just like what you said. They're not open to the full bounty of the universe coming in and meeting needs in a much more organic and inspired way, frankly, than you're ever going to achieve when you've tried to predetermine things. If that makes sense.
Right. Yeah, this stuff is crazy. So the fifth reason that you put out is that monogamy is an exclusive club. How about that one?
Well, I've always kind of had this yucky feeling when I go to clubs and they have the rope outside and they try to make it seem like you have to be extra special to get in. You know what I'm talking about, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's just, to me, that's always just seemed elitist, kind of obnoxious, manipulative, And that's how I feel about a lot of monogamous couples. It's like, oh no, we can't even consider including you in our relationship because we've decided we're an exclusive club over here. And frankly, I find it offensive. I mean, to me, it is the ultimate form of bigotry, basically. It is like racism, and it's even worse because you haven't just excluded one race. You are literally excluding everyone except a special snowflake who's just, so much better than everybody else and up on a pedestal. And I find it, frankly, disgusting.
See, I think most of that is like a form of self-delusion. I don't think they really think that person is that great. No, I really don't. And of course, a lot of times that is the case. So many of these marriages, they just hate each other. But even in the cases where even in the cases where they claim to love each other and be content, it's like, I don't think that they really love that person that much as they're just afraid of what the alternative would be.
Yeah.
Because they've isolated themselves to only having one person, they have no choice. So I think it's coming more from a place of fear and scarcity than it is that they actually love the person or appreciate them. They don't really appreciate them that much.
Yeah.
It's just they have no choice because that's all they got. It's what they've limited themselves to, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I've seen both versions of it, and I think they're two sides of the same coin, right?
Yeah.
You know, one is the, like, exclusionary kind of, you can come close but not too close, and one is the, I'm terrified to lose what I have. So you've got, I mean, they're always going to be the two sides of the same coin, because that's what exclusivity does to us. You know?
Yeah. Yeah, speaking of orgy parties, no, yeah, just to fill in the audience in case they didn't catch it earlier, Erika took part in a non-monogamous,
non-monogamous intimate party last weekend.
Right. And so I think one of the reasons that a lot of people feel repulsed by the concept of polygamy, or, you know, that which is the opposite of monogamy, I think a lot of times the reason that they are so unattracted to it is because they... So first, I think the primary reason people like monogamy is because they live in scarcity, because they feel they may not be able to get certain sexual partners or to find the love they want in life. What they do to remedy that scarcity, that fear, is to tie somebody down to guarantee they're going to have somebody that's going to love them for their whole lives.
Uh-huh.
And so I think a lot of times the reason people are so unattracted to polygamy is that, or non-contractual, non-tied down relationships, is that they fear what would happen. Okay, now I just totally lost my train of thought. Wow.
No, I mean, I think I see where you're going with it.
Yeah. Go ahead and point out, come back to me.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's clearly a fear-based mentality.
Yeah.
And people, the beauty, okay, when for a few years of my adult life where I became extremely delusional myself and actually was thinking I should get married, which I now realize was coming from a lot of conditioning, right? I actually had an open relationship in college, which is one of the best relationships I've ever had, but I had kind of got brainwashed. And that is exactly the mentality I had. It was like, oh, I've got to, like, grab something and keep it as mine. And the more I thought that way, the more fearful I became, right?
Yeah.
Which, ironically, is very harmful to the relationships, because fear just creates what you don't want in relationships, right?
Yeah.
So an orgy party, because that's where you started with this.
Yeah.
And this is not some unbridled promiscuity. It was a very intimate, gradual, amazing event. But what it does is it helps us open into our fear. Are you still there? I can't see your face.
Yeah, I'm still here. I'm sorry. It'll be back in a second.
So basically, we can't hide from those fears, right? So people brought their partners to this party, and they expressed out loud, it's scary to me. What if he decides he likes someone else better than me? What if I lose him, right? But when we face those fears, they actually become less scary. And when we try to hide from them by putting this wall up, they become more scary.
Absolutely.
So to me, it's all about, are we going to be a hostage to our fear, or are we going to face it honestly, open the walls of our relationships, and start actually loving people instead of living in fear and scarcity? And that's the choice we have.
Yeah, that reminds me of what I was going to say, is that I think what people have to realize is that there is far more abundance and security in a polygamous lifestyle than there is in a monogamous lifestyle.
Yeah, that's the paradox.
Yeah.
Because you're always going to have someone to love you.
Yeah.
And not only that, but people tend to be more attracted to their partners, right? You're less likely to take someone for granted if you see a bunch of other people attracted to them, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that's the thing with the with individuals who are too emotionally wrapped up with the whole monogamous thing is I think the reason they had that knee-jerk reaction to the whole polygamous lifestyle is that they see the fact that people aren't tying each other down, And so they sense insecurity in there. Where they're like, wow, well, if I can't hold somebody to be mine, then how am I going to guarantee that I'll have somebody there for me in the first place? And a marriage and a legally binding contract is the ultimate form of guarantee. It's the ultimate security that you're going to get the love you want. But again, that does kind of stem from a lack of self-love in yourself. Like, I think when you truly love yourself in a healthy, prosperous way, you reach a level of emotional independence that frees you up of the need to want to hold other people down.
Yep.
And then that kind of opens the gateway to wanting to just love others, not in a tied down way, but in a more open, non-contractual, non-binding, polygamous way.
Yeah. I completely agree with you. I mean, I've spent a lot of the last few years just releasing fear out of my system. And the more fear I release, the less desire for monogamy I had. Like, it was a progressive thing. And then it was a realization, like, of what you said. It's like monogamy is a form of external validation. It's the belief that somehow this person is providing something I can't provide for myself. Whereas if we have a lot of faith in our ability to create new connections and new relationships, we don't have any desire anymore to lock it down. And I think that's what you're saying.
Yeah, pretty much. So we're just about out of time here, but yeah. So I'm just curious, real quick, one last question. And I don't know, you don't have to answer this if you don't want to, but I'm really curious because it's not every day you meet a woman like yourself who has adopted and implemented this lifestyle view. I'm curious about, you know, I have a certain view, and society in general has a certain view of. You're still there, right?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Okay. Society has a view about, you know, what women desire in men. But I think a lot of times, because it seems most people are in monogamous relationships, what men and women find sexually attractive is probably a lot of lies and people trying to, you know, hide behind their supposed desire for monogamy.
Yeah.
You, as a woman who's adopted this non-monogamous lifestyle, who is at least, you know, still experimenting with it, but what generally do you find sexually attractive in males? I'm curious if there's a difference between someone like you.
It's interesting. I was just thinking about this last night because as I've let go of my fear, that has definitely evolved. You know, I used to be, this is going to sound really sad, but I used to be looking for someone who had the same educational pedigree that I had and all this blah, 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 right? Horrible. It's like horrible.
You were a Nazi.
And now I'm just way more open to different types of people. Another thing with non-monogamy is because you're not forced to choose only one, you can start being more open. Like maybe this person you really connect in this way, and this person you really connect in this other way, and now you can have both. You don't have to choose, right? But one thing I noticed last night, to answer your question more directly, people with clarity of purpose, both men and women, are very attractive to me because I have a lot of clarity of purpose. So there's a real resonance there. Like I love people who are so in touch with their purpose that they're very passionate and alive. And last night was just full of people like that. It was amazing. I mean, to me, that's just exciting. It's exciting to be around people who are in touch with their purpose.
Very cool. Alrighty then, that was a really interesting conversation. Could you tell my viewers where they can catch up with you, your website, Twitter, etc.?
Yeah, I have, Erika Awakening is where you can find me on pretty much all the major social media networks. Facebook.com/Erika Awakening is my page. Then ErikaAwakening.com is my controversial blog. And TapSmarter.com is a different website I have where I have video products that actually help people release all this fear. Okay. If they want to get into the actual nuts and bolts of how do I go from being scared to not being scared. I mean, this is, you got to do the inner work. So those are some places people could find me.
Perfect. Very cool. All right, so if you can just stay on the line, I'm just going to say a couple last things to my audience, and we'll keep chatting a little bit afterwards.
Okay.
All right, guys. Thanks a lot for tuning in. If you enjoyed the video, please share it on your social media platforms and all that stuff. Check out Erika Awakening. She has a lot of really cool ideas. I think she has a lot of balls. Metaphorically speaking, she has giant balls for posting that article. Definitely check it out. I have it posted in the description section below. And stay tuned, guys. Thanks so much.